Welcome to Cheques and Balances. On this week's episode, we're lucky enough to have Shaun McGivern. He's a partner at Haigh Lyon.
Shaun's been a lawyer for 20 years, so we get questions when it comes to the legal field all the time. So we thought it'd be great to have Shaun come on the podcast, give some tips, ways that he might be able to help you or your lawyer might be able to help you, areas to watch out. So we hope you enjoy the episode.
Cheers. Welcome to Cheques and Balances. I'm Michael Vincent. This is James Blair, and this is Shaun McGivern. And this week, wills.
So we teased last week that we were very excited about what was going on this week. We've got Shaun McGivern from Haigh Lyon, a partner with us. And Shaun, when we're sitting down with clients, a question we get all the time is we're kind of going through the discovery process and we're kind of coming up with a plan for their future, how to grow their wealth. We focus on the protection side and we go, have you got a will? And then you get this kind of look and they look at each other and they go, it's been on the list. And I find wills are kind of like life insurance and income protection. There's sort of 10 things to do. 1 to 9 gets done. Number 10 is the will or the insurance. And then you fill it up with more interesting stuff.
I'd have to agree with that. I'd say that when it comes to wills, it's almost like people get scared of their mortality. So the fact that they're getting a will almost sort of tempts fate a little bit, and they think that if they've got the will, it means it's now time for them to pass on. And so if they try and not have the will, then they're going to basically extend their life out a little bit longer than what they might. So
I better rip up my will then.
So a lot of clients don't have them, and they become a real struggle for us to get involved in. But we'd have to say they're probably one of the most important documents that you are going to sign at some stage during your life.
Yeah, and I've got a list of clients each year that as part of probably about 30 of them, I go, have we got that will sorted? I go, not yet, Jan. I'm like, all right, talk about it next year.
Talk about it next year. We'll keep pushing it out.
So let's start with a really basic question, Shaun. Why should I have a will?
Why should you have a will? It's a good question, and it's one of the questions that we get asked a lot because that same reason is, well, what am I going to put in my will? Why do I need the will, and what do I want to have in a will? A will is there to basically make sure that all of that wealth that you've hopefully created through your lifetime gets given to the people that you want it to go to, whether it's your children, your spouse, or in particular if you've got specific gifts that you want to give to someone to make sure that they remember you. You get a lot of legacy items that might be, especially mothers want to make sure that there are certain jewellery that goes to daughters, and it means a little bit more if it's been given to that particular person and they've actually wanted that piece. Some people just say, oh, let's just leave jewellery to the daughters and they can sort it out. That can create a whole lot of squabbles after they've left in terms of, I wanted mum's engagement, I wanted mum's wedding ring. Whereas mum said, I wanted you to have the engagement ring and I wanted you to have the wedding ring. There's a personal touch to it. So,
and it takes the decision out of their hands, right? Which can avoid a lot of that conflict.
Yeah, it definitely does. And that's what the last thing you want is to have your nearest and dearest fighting over something that's special to you when you can make sure that that's left in the will to them.
I understand, Shaun, you've got a story of the importance of it as well.
Show us the horror story.
We've recently, and I have to be a little bit careful about the details around it, so I'll try and take a little bit of that out of it. We've had one client that was not with us but came to us afterwards, and her husband had passed away without a will. There'd been some fractions within the family, and what had happened is that when they'd accumulated their wealth and they'd managed to get a few investment properties together, their own home as well, the father and the son were actually, I suppose, disjointed and they didn't get on that well. Mother was having an issue with cancer, which her and her husband had been funding some of it. And what had actually happened was he died without the will, and so therefore he died intestate. And what that means is that his wishes weren't recorded as to what he wanted to happen. And as a result, there's certain things with the Wills Act and Property Relationship Act that comes into play that allocates certain amounts in certain ways. So as a result, even though that they had worked together to accumulate this wealth base, she would only receive a certain portion of that out of it. And it's like $150,000 that she gets allocated to her. It then goes to, a certain proportion goes to children, and if there's no children, that goes up to the parents. So you can imagine what's happened is that she's sitting there, husband hasn't done a will, now she's finding that a portion of their assets is actually going to be, they didn't have children, going back up to the father, who's had a few issues with the son,
Yeah.
and then also to the mother.
Yeah.
And again, there'd been some fractions there. So despite the fact that it had been the husband and wife that had created this, she was now losing it, and she's going to have to bring claims against the estate, either under the PRA or actually under the Wills Act, depending on which one she was going to get the most of.
Yeah.
He could have solved this whole issue by getting a will. A small fraction of what it was costing, and obviously as a result, unfortunately, having to go to the court and apply to get these various actions brought forward cost her a lot more money than what the will would have. So I always say to clients there is that if you've built this wealth together, a will is a great way of making sure the money goes to where you think it should go. It is effectively your words from the grave.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, working together as a team, you want to make sure you're looking after your teammate, and sometimes if you don't have that will in place, then unfortunately that may not be the result that you wanted will occur.
Yeah. And I guess so that we're sort of looking at a couple in that scenario. I guess what we sort of get asked quite a bit is, if I own all my assets jointly anyway, do I still need a will? So was that the case in that scenario? Did they own them jointly, or?
No, so they had it as, it was a bizarre situation in that, and I can't probably go into too much details from there, but yeah, there are certain parts of it there, but it wasn't done in such a way that she could have that way. If you have got joint bank accounts and joint properties, then yes, that will go automatically by transmission, but again, there may be certain intricacies that you probably need to have a chat with your lawyer about to make sure that that happens. And again, it's just easier in that situation to have the will in place, because he had died intestate as well, so you've got to go through the whole process with the courts to get letters of administration and so yeah, it wasn't just as easy as what you've got there. So yeah.
And if I've got all my assets jointly held with my spouse, is there any benefit if everything's just going to fall over to the other person?
Yeah, well, again, there's different parts of it as well that you might want certain things to go to certain people, and obviously that won't automatically happen. If you haven't got the will in place as well, you're dying intestate, so you've got to go away and get court administration. So there's a whole lot of additional cost that goes with that of going through the process that may not be there if you've got the will in place as well. So.
And if it's intestate, does that usually take longer?
Yeah. There's a certain process that you've got to go through there, which you wouldn't have in place, if the will was there.
Yeah.
So I always say, look, if you're over 18 years of age and you've got more than $15,000 worth of assets, then you should get a will in place. That's the sort of the threshold for applying to the courts for probate, which is not much when you think about it. You put in place KiwiSaver, any savings you've got a car, you're going to get to that 15,000 threshold pretty quickly.
So. You got a few Honda Civics as up quickly. So if say I go, I know I need to get a will. I dealt with this lawyer once with a property transaction, but I don't really have a lawyer. I don't know where to start. Where's a good place to start if you go, I think I've got a relatively simple situation, but want to get it all documented?
Well, see, I think there you've already got the the catalyst for getting a will. If you're buying a property, you've got an asset that's quite considerable. Again, the hope is with property is that it's going to increase in value exponentially over the period of time, and you're hopefully going to be around for quite a while. So that if you haven't got that, there's a lot of money that you're sort of not taking care of. So it's best to make sure you've just got the will there. So it's a good time that when you are buying that property, you should be chatting with your lawyer about actually let's get a will done as well. If you're getting insurance policy put in place as well, make sure you get a will with it as well.
And say I don't have a house, but maybe I've got some assets. Like obviously talking to a lawyer is a good idea. How do you feel about like online wills, will kits, napkin, Mike witnesses everything when it goes to him?
So the problem is that if it's not, there's a certain procedure that's got to take place for a will to be valid. You can bring evidence to a judge and say, well, this is their thinking behind it. So often if we have a client come in, while we may not be able to prepare the will straight away, we will still go through their instructions and write to allocate it, and then I'll still get them just to sign it, so that if they were to walk out that afternoon and something was to happen to them before they'd had a chance to sign that will, at least I could submit that to the judge as evidence as to what it's there. So the cheap wills serve a certain purpose in that they are cheap. Sometimes the old saying, you pay peanuts, you get monkeys. Also, there's a number of different factors that you might want to consider that go into the will as well that they may not cover off as well. I've looked at one of them before, and I said, okay, look, it covers a relative portion of what you want to have in there, but there's still certain elements that are missing there as well. So beware of them.
Yeah.
Enter into them at your own peril. The difference between what you might pay for a $50, $100, $200 will, there's a number of law firms around there that will do them for not much more, and you get the experience of a solicitor or a legal exec putting them together for you. And going through in terms of the formalities, they have to be witnessed, they have to be executed properly, and the like. And if they're not, well then they are effectively void, but are good for evidence of potentially putting in front of it.
Yeah, that just sounds messy though.
It's messy, it's expensive because you've got to pay a lawyer to go through and present this, which is going to cost a lot more.
Yeah. Well, as we've been talking, Shaun, one thing that has really resonated with me, I guess, is the similarities between a will and going through life insurance and income protection in terms of, you don't really expect it to happen to you. You go, I can always sort that out another day. But just like you, I have people come to me and go, James, I've received this money, or I'm sick, or I don't have money. Fix it. Yeah, it's very hard to fix it in hindsight, right? So I guess as a real message, as a reminder, if you've been putting it on the back burner and you haven't got around to doing it, please make sure that you prioritize that will. It's not a lot of fun to get done, but make sure you get that done. And we'll wrap it up there. We'll see you in the next episode.
Cheers.
Cheers.